to the Project Restoration Podcast.
Welcome back to Project Restoration Podcast. PRP is what I like to call it. We are back. Stephen Tolliver, Landis, son of Lawrence, La Soul Radio, Clemens. And we're on our second podcast, and we're talking about trauma and triage.
Yeah, we're actually exploring the mental health crisis that's taking place in our country right now, and not only that, but we're zeroing in on a few groups, preferably African Americans and Americans alike. But we're looking at the mental health crisis and just kind of sifting through the ruins of 2020, where it's not necessarily that 2020 caused all this. I mean, I really feel like this is a breaking point, and I can actually go back as far as 2000. 2000 when I worked as a pharmacy technician when I was a teenager, right out of college, and I can vividly remember working in the pharmacy and maybe handling a few psychotropic drugs as we counted them, and it seemed like one year, man, like everybody was taking Xanax and lorazepam and Ritalin and Adderall, and that has been the standard for the last 20 years. So I mean, we're seeing the effects now, man. It seems like people are at their breaking point. I mean, it seems like there at one point in time before COVID, there was a mass shooting every other week, and here we are now. I mean, we're in a situation where we have
we got a lot of hood life, we got a lot of ghetto appetites, we got a lot of music that's banging in influence into lifestyle choices that put you into the what can I say, gumbo and the soup, the soupy conditions that keep us in this Hell's Kitchen has a lot to do with our influences on our media, coming from our media through our music and through our culture. It puts you in with the pharmakia, which within the drugs and within a certain type of culture that would be violent, that would be about prostitution, gang banging, that would be about clubbing where assassinations and shootings would happen, rapes would happen, different stuff would happen. But I feel like we're being influenced to get into certain realms that would get murky. And I think when the pills come out, not so much hard drugs, but just going to what Steven was saying, like just switching over to Somas and then switching over to Xanax, just going that quick, just boom, boom. That's putting you in a world of trouble with entities that you don't even know about. You got to learn the hard way that you're dealing with real stuff, because it's promoted as, oh, this is what everybody's doing. Oh, this is cool because it's over the counter. This is cool because you get it at this institution. Oh, this is cool because this is like the song, and this guy talks about it, and that girl talks about it. But you're not seeing what entities are on this chessboard that we in.
Right. It's accessibility. I mean, you think about it. In the 90s, there were very few drug commercials, right? And then we go from that to, are you tired at night? Do you get hungry? Do your feet itch while you sleep? Try new Zyprexa. Warning, may cause sudden death, and so on and so forth. And then it went from that to ask your doctor. So now we're not even at a point where the doctor is prescribing medicine. The customer comes in and tells the doctor what to give them, right? So this is a whole entire paradigm shift when it comes to the drug consumer culture. And here we are now. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of money to be made in selling dope. I mean, we'll call it what it is. And this is the thing I saw as a young farm tech, someone who went to school to be a pharmacist, and quickly realized that that's not something that I want to give my life to. But while I was doing that, I worked in some of the more affluent areas and also some of the poorest of the poor neighborhoods. And what the commonality or the common thread that I saw was that everyone was hooked on drugs. And they were so addicted to the point where they would act out whenever they wouldn't get the drugs. So that made me start thinking. It really begged the question, what kind of hold do these psychotropic drugs have on the people who consume them?
This is a question I got. Was that more for trauma and triage, or is that more for survivor's remorse? Because a lot of people know what CERB is these days. A lot of people know what promethazine, what codeine knows. Everybody know what purple drink is. Everybody know what sipping paint is these days. But back in the day, it was Houston thing. So if you look at rap now and how everybody brag about sipping on codeine, Houston is the epicenter of that. So Houston went through a serious wave of that.
Yeah.
And it killed a lot of people, and nobody cares until it's famous people.
Right.
But DJ Screw, the actual pioneer, I mean, survivor's remorse? To me, that's like surviving a wave of activity, like drug use or gangsterisms. 1994 in New Orleans, for instance. 1994 anywhere on the streets. Gang, just a whole violence, like surviving your 20s as a rapper right now. The whole Pop Smoke, King Von, all that stuff, the whole this wholesale murder, surviving waves of violence and demonic intrusion. Survivor's remorse, is it really, are we recapping that, or are we going, is this more of a trauma triage situation?
I think it's more of a trauma triage situation. And the reason why I say that is simply this. The drug culture is the way that we cope with the trauma of living in this machine.
Okay, coping.
Right? It's the way that we cope. It's the way that our society copes with the increased work levels and the stagnant wages, the poison water, the food that's not healthy, the constant bombardment of really like radioactive media, just the hatred, the vitriol that's being spewed daily. That's the way people cope, man. People cope with life with drugs. So rather than improving rather than improving their mental health, right? Rather than improving their lifestyle, they'll just take the dope. They'll take the drugs because the drugs will actually help them cope with it, while at the same time at detriment, because that stuff does kill your body. But it keeps you going. You know what I'm saying? Like these are things that help people continue in a very unhealthy and toxic environment. That work environment, home environment, just social environment. Like this is what helps people make it. And I know this because every day when I worked in that pharmacy, or every week, or every 2 weeks, or every month, the same people will come through with the same ills, and you came to the realization very quickly, like these are not cures, these are treatments. And it's only a treatment because it's enabling someone to continue on in a very unhealthy situation with no hope for a cure.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate, and that's what you can see if you really cared, So with trauma and triage moving on, I'm just going to just recap with survivor's guilt. I want to say that as we move forward from 2020 to 2021, everybody knows, like I said, we're recapping, we're going from, it's a real transition, cosmologically, a real transition, universal energy, galaxies, all that stuff, a real transition to this is what's to be done. We all see it intellectually. We all see it's obvious what needs to be done. Which one of us is actually going to get together and do this? Which one of us is going to ascend to the challenge? How are we going to get everybody else on this level? How are we bringing people along? Let's face what we've always been sweeping under the rug. One thing, as you notice as a youth, with those type of things, the first thing you should think about is, well, if you're always sweeping stuff under the rug, isn't there a time when you address what you've been sweeping under the rug? Is there ever a time? Or if there ever is a time, that time is now, my friends. It is the Great Conjunction. It is the time where Jupiter and Saturn are 0.01 degrees from each other. It is called a great reset. Even the Pope has initiated a great reset. The financial departments of the earth have initiated a great reset. And media is even pumping a narrative called the new normal. Sound familiar? So it's coming through. It's just how people want to manipulate the forces. And this is why we have the podcast. We are actually trying to restore the forces. We're trying to actually get people up off the ground because 2020 has floored them. And they've been shaken and rocked and changed up. So come on now. So if you still here, the first show was what? Survivor's remorse. Why am I here? Am I here to repent? Am I here to fast? Am I here to work on myself? Why didn't you just take me out? I should have died like everybody. Oh, calm down. Stop being so dramatic. And the second one, trauma and triage, what we on now, what we're going to go forward with. And before we break off into the real deal, triggers and regression. Does that make you feel like anything? Triggers and regression.
Yeah, it does actually. Triggers. I think a lot of our triggers are actually the visual. The visual. I think that when you talk about how to manufacture consent, right? How to get people to acquiesce to things that are unhealthy for them, right? You need media, right? You need a constant flow of information or disinformation or can't, right? Backspeak, doublespeak, different things that actually help people become more comfortable with things that are not true. But they're embedded in that are triggers, right? So, for example, you had racial protests this year. You had political protests this year, right? Something amped everybody up, right? The George Floyd killing was a trigger for the black community, right? Because he was not the first black man to be killed, nor was he the last, right? That was a trigger, right? The election was a trigger for our conservative community, right? They snapped and went to D.C. and tore up the Capitol, right? That's a trigger. So they're triggers that are embedded all around us, and I think that for a lot of our listeners, there's everyone has a threshold, everyone has a breaking point, and I think that they're even with the triggers, there are certain responses. You mentioned regression. Regression is a survival technique, right? It's a coping mechanism, right? When we regress and go backwards, and it's also a product of PTSD or post-traumatic stress syndrome, or post-traumatic stress disorder, where you encounter that thing, that trigger or that threat, and you retreat back into yourself. And I think that's what society has done, in a lot of ways, man. Like, a lot of your arts, your creativity, your innovativeness, some of that came out, but in some ways, some of that shrank as well, right? This illness that's out there has really, really pounded society in such a way, man, where it makes you think. I think that the most recent president we had, I think the reason why he was able to rise to the heights that he did with this populist movement was because a lot of people in the U.S., because of the economic hardships and because of things that had happened, they regressed away from the idea of being, quote unquote, a citizen of the world, and they retreated to the idea of closing borders because, they didn't see the need or didn't see the benefit of it. So I think that for a lot of our listeners and a lot of people who are out there, man, there are triggers that are embedded, and I think the key is to recognize your triggers too and embrace them. Like, you understand, like, okay, when I see this is not good for me. This is gonna cause me to lose it. I'm gonna lose my stuff. Listening to this, like I learned a long time ago. My anxiety level goes up when I watch CNN more than 2 hours a day. You know what I'm saying? everything can't be breaking news because by definition, breaking news is like the one thing today that's supposed to be important.
Well, here's my question: who taught you to respect your frailty? Because if you grow up in Texas as a Texas boy, and men aren't that deep around you, sorry, not to be funny, but men aren't just naturally just gonna break down no philosopher's stone stuff to you every day. Not gonna tell you about what book they read. It's gonna be about be tough, shut up, stop crying, be a man,
Go play football.
go play football, rub some dirt on it, keep walking. So you got all this built up demonic stuff growing off of you. You know, all this resentment, all this anger, all this you could be having all kinds of stuff growing inside you because you're taught to put on this hard exterior that is impenetrable and indifferent. When really your feelings are getting hurt. You're feeling shame, guilt, hopelessness, fear, despair, anxiety, vulnerability, and you having to put off a completely impenetrable exoskeleton, which is kind of an ego, but it's like a super ego bridge. That's
It's more of a super ego.
And so what's happening is you're starting to see manifestations of the demonic overlap, and it'll turn into a murder-suicide, which is kids are murdered, the wife is murdered, the person kills themselves, the man kills himself. Couldn't take it, didn't understand didn't understand the other parts of it. And this is why we are even talking about this, is because yeah, your feelings get hurt. Yeah, you get a little pissed off and you get out of yourself. But what people don't understand is this world we're living in is full, is saturated with demonic energy now because we're doing things scientifically, politically, and on a power pendulum to open ourselves up to these energies on purpose. Some people know how to, I guess, get their money and get their power and get what they need, but they're putting everybody else at risk because of their sociopathy or because of their psychopathy, right? But it is what it is, and what it is we're full of portals and shit's coming through. One thing I don't want to get too dark. When something's open and things are coming through, good things can be coming through at the same time. So when I say, even when you go to All Hallows Eve, where they say all these devil worshippers out here worshiping these Halloween spirits and all that, what it is spirits are just a wide open. But on that day, you could be praying, because if you look at Hebrew calendar, right around that time, the Hebrews are praying and fasting about some good stuff. But just at the same time, the pagans is getting a damn face of death on and worshiping all these dead people's spirits and stuff. So what it is, it's just a very thick spiritual time, and on Halloween and on certain days. But I'm saying the times we're living in right now, wide open for spiritual paradigm shifts, and so when we talk about trauma and triage, and we talk about triggers and regression, one thing I do want to bring up is, if you ever want to assess your situation and make it better, you have to get the toxic people and toxic situations out of your environment. You have to kind of clean your petri dish.
Yeah, detox.
You have to detox. You have to fast. You have to purge. There's just some sort of excretion of disease that you got to get out of you. Some kind of illness must be confronted and ejected for you to survive and be protected. You know what I'm talking about? But yeah.
Well, and to be more in more practical terms, less in so more can come out. So, we're inundated a lot of times with social media. We're inundated with a lot of meaningless chatter, meaningless talk, conversations that go nowhere, conversations about other people, conversations about gossip, right? Start cutting your conversations down, right? And start being more intentional about them. Like, what are we talking about? There's a quote that says, "Small people talk about other people, average people talk about things, great people talk about ideas." What kind of ideas are you talking about during the day? Like, what are you creating in these conversations you're having with people? Because ultimately, that's going to determine, the trajectory of your day, and of your week or of your year. Those things, everything is cumulative. So if the accumulation of my conversations is nothing more than gossip and tearing down other people, then I'm going to drown in negativity. I'm going to drown in toxicity. But if I start cutting off those folks that want to engage in that kind of character assassination, if I want to cut off people who literally, like, they spew hate or better yet their
battery acid.
Exactly. Cut those folks out. And again, less is more. So again, you have, if you have a circle of 10 friends, you probably don't need about 2, right? Or better yet, I call it the 300 challenge, right? You want to go to battle, but you don't want to take everybody with you. You want to take the right people with you. So you think about your team, think about your circle, right? We're talking about fasting. We're talking about, and the idea of fasting is taking away. It's more like replacement therapy. I'm taking away the physical so I can fill myself with the spiritual. So if I'm cutting out my carnal-minded friends who are worried about the next purse or bag, or worried about James Harden getting traded or whatever it is, let's cut those people out. Let's start diminishing or reducing those conversations so that we can have big conversations with the right kinds of people.
A few things we want to take out of the toxic environment that I wrote down here are narcissists that we know are narcissists, people who are just self-absorbed and really have a disability to see how they play an important part as a microcosm in a macrocosm. People who really just can't see that they're part of a collective. Passive-aggressive environments where people have bad intentions and they're doing it through subliminal means and through indirect means. And aggressive environments, shouting, yelling, cussing, threatening.
And imposters.
Imposters.
Yeah, I say imposters. You have people who literally will hijack your life and take you for a ride. These are people who try to impose their will on your day. Like, these are people who try to tell you what you should be doing, or they try to carry out their will and their wishes through you vicariously. And I mean, a lot of times these are parents, family members, people who are close to you, people who want you to have, I want you to have this so bad. Well, you go get it. If you're not careful, you can have your life hijacked by the expectations of other people.
Well, that hijack is a beast. Body snatchers. In argumentatives. I call it, I wrote it out for some reason as argumentatives. And these are people who can basically hold your energy up. So where you're fragmented and you're not going anywhere because you're all over the place, because you're in a friction and static location arguing with somebody. That's where your energy, I'm trying to think about your energy. Your energy is in friction, but it's stagnant. And it's locked, it's interlocked in a heated exchange. And people like that for some reason, because it's, even if you think about, let's go back to the scripture, Daniel, about withholding. The way that the wording of the Bible, basically, of the scriptures was, I was withheld.
Daniel 10. Michael, yeah.
I took all that energy that was coming straight out of the office and withheld it for days upon days. That's some hella defense, bro. That's hella some defense. And, it just shows you that they know what's going on. They know what it is. They know what they're working with. They know what it's going to take to hold it up. Yeah. And so when people coming at you, and when you're catching yourself in these energy traps or these vortexes,
recognize them.
maybe you're just like a novice on the beach or surfing. You don't know how to surf. You don't know about undertows and undercurrents and riff currents, and you don't understand about thermodynamics, and you're being caught in these swells and under these waves, right? And this energy, and it's looking like it's beating the hell out of you and wants to kill you, but really it's because you don't know where to be and how to accept the wave and how to ride the wave.
Right.
Sometimes you don't fight it.
Well, I think recognition is key, man. And again, most of us are blindsided by what we don't know. Right? We don't realize that we haven't learned how to identify friends from foes. I mean, and again, too, recognizing toxic people along with toxic environments, right? Toxic environment is made up of groups of people, and sometimes that may be a situation like a job, right? It may be a job that's killing you. If you go to work every day and you feel sick, then you need to find another job. I know that sounds crass. I know that sounds insensitive. I know especially during this time, that it seems very insensitive. But what's more important, your mental health or your paycheck?
That hit close to home with me. Yeah, because just as the brain father behind Black lesbian Marxists, it's funny that my jokes end up coming true. So when I'm talking about this brand of woman that they're using to foment manipulation on like our trauma, they're manipulating trauma. People understand there's a lot of power behind Black trauma, behind Black people getting killed. Like 2015, where 242 unarmed Black people were murdered by policemen. There's a lot of power in that. So if you're a witch and you're an opportunist and you're a go-getter, you're gonna go ahead and take advantage of that energy. And that's what I broke down with Black Lives Matter, is that it was actually ran by Marxist witches and warlocks who have found a way how to corner the market on Black trauma and use it for not only political gain, but spiritual witchcraft, which is the African spiritism rituals that they recant and imbibe spirits and basically conjure.
Animism.
Big Wakanda, the big Wakanda list of don'ts, but and I do want to say just real quick is there's a movie with Matthew McConaughey called Failure to Launch. Yeah. I should probably see it because I think it's about me, but I think that was one of my big things for as trauma and triage that I thought about when I woke up this morning with a little sadness is I had to figure it out, man. I had to go through my little energy circuits and figure out what the deal was. And the failure to launch what I learned from listening to an entire presentation is that it's embarrassing. Yeah, it looks like it points towards mental illness, points towards depression, points towards substance abuse. It points towards all kinds of your whole grocery list of psychological problems. But mainly it's a hesitation move. It's a delaying of your development. It's like, it's like the counselor said some shit that you ain't want to hear. It's like really like you offended and hurt, but at the same time you're like, well, she has a degree. Maybe she saw something. Maybe she sees something in me. It's time to just fess up. I'm remedial. There's remedialities in me. And that's what it is. It hurt, man. It's easy to laugh at my pain, I guess. But the thing is that there's a remedial part of you, right? And that was my big thing. Is the failure to launch was just like, yeah, it's been fun, I guess. But just like, he didn't teach me that now. But the thing is that you just know that it's gonna be bad. It's all gonna all be bad. It's like the cosmos say, not you. Everybody else can go. We need to work with you a little bit longer. There's lessons you need to learn. There's hard lessons you gotta learn. And in retrospect, no matter how many times it hurt my feelings, in retrospect, it was God saying, no, trust me. No, because I got friends who are in messed up situations right now that are, married or got babies with a woman or whatever, and it's come to them going to prison. It's coming to them going to jail. It's coming to like being drugged through the system. So it's like, knowing my little sensitivities and heart and my emotions and my psychology, do I really want to go through divorce? Do I really want to go through cheating spouses? Do I really want to go through a woman using witchcraft and leverage of my children against me? Like, that's not cool. Like, I'm gonna get crazy. Like, I'm already crazy. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to be tested with this kind of stuff. Me and the judge gonna have some. We're gonna have to catch. She gonna have to catch that fade. No, but I mean, that's just. I already know. Like, I couldn't do it, man. So it's a calibration. It's just a recalibration of your fate and of your life path. Even though it was initially hurtful.
We talked about recognizing your trauma, and recognizing your trauma and trying to own it. But I hesitate to say this. I don't want to speak in hyperbole, but black folks don't really do therapy.
Mm-mm.
Mm-mm. And
everybody know that. All that extra money, $75, $65 an hour, nigga. An hour. Bitch, I'd rather make a mixtape. What you talking about? I'm sorry, guys. Let's keep the show going.
But I mean, it's necessary, man. In fact, I think it's more necessary. It's just as, if not more necessary, for us, because if anybody's familiar with Joy DeGruy, Dr. Joy DeGruy, her work, post-traumatic slave syndrome. She wrote that book back in 2008, I believe. But in it, she details the traumatic impact that slavery has had generationally. And she compares it, and I think probably the best analogy, and perhaps the most is graphic, but she compares it to a woman being raped. And she says that when that woman is raped, not only does that woman feel that and remember that, her kids are going to, because that traumatic experience will live on through her children. And she says the same thing happened with slavery. So we have a population of people living in the same country in which they were enslaved, who are every day living out the results and the consequences of that action without any sort of real reparations or reconciliation. And we wonder why we're crazy. We wonder why we're 7 years. Literally, we are expected to live 7 years less than any other group. We're dying of all
under the curses of Deuteronomy 28. It really reads very graphic and very vivid, and it's just just certain things like you'll look for your children, you'll long for your children. That's about it, nigga. You know what I mean? That's only our situation. That is only on this soil. Only a black woman in mass has longed for their children because they don't know where their children are being sold to. They don't know who's raping their children and beating their children. So if you look at Deuteronomy 28 and you look at the certain things, you'll be haunted by the sound of an open leash. You'll be sold and nobody shall buy you, which means nobody shall redeem you. That means nobody shall come in and be like, no, don't sell this person into slavery. I know this person, I'll pay for. Nobody's going to come. Nobody delivers you. When you're under the curses of God, there's a special feeling to it. You're going to feel forsaken and lost. You're going to, and we're going to go into we were meant to go into a certain punishment that was so deep and so hard cutting that we were going to forget who we were as a people. Not only I forgot my name, nigga could beat me enough where I can forget my name, you know what I'm saying? But I won't forget the fact that I was a Negro and I straight out of H-Time, motherfucker, me Texas. I'm sorry, guys. Sorry. We But yeah, seriously, trauma and triage. One thing I want to say about triage is triage makes you prioritize what the real problem is. Like seriously, we make fun of trauma because black people in trauma are like peanut butter and chocolate, baby. This is the dynamics we got, baby. Don't mess this up, please. But you know, if we think about it, if we compare, we know we got trauma, but there's the triage. How you gonna go into a house where some people got their head cut off, some people got their arms cut off, and then some people got the flu, and then some people just got a couple stab marks, and you know, it's like, bro, let's get the bad stuff out of the way, so we can even work with the rest of the stuff. And if we take care of the top 20% of the priorities, the most craziest of the craziest, the most traumatic of the most traumatic.
See, and I think that we finally have an opportunity now to have one of the first, I won't say one of the first generations, but we have a generation of people, man, who really don't know that struggle. I mean, and we have a chance for them to really heal and kind of break some of those generational curses that have come as a result of the trauma that we've experienced. But I don't think we see the opportunity in that. You know what I'm saying? We see an opportunity. I think for a lot of us, we see an opportunity for our kids to be part of that story that we rewrite history and say, okay, well, you know, the bad stuff never really happened. It didn't impact us. Let's just move on. But it's just like, you can't do that. You have to acknowledge it, and you have to deal with it, and then you have to make your kids aware, but not to the point where it destroys their confidence in people. You know what I'm saying? We're not to the point where it embitters them. You know what I'm saying? Like, we owe it to our kids to let them know, like, look, man, like, you're here, but you know, it's not. You're here because a lot of people sacrificed for you to be here, not because you were welcomed in with open arms.
So this breaks into me and my dad be talking about, even back when I was at U of H. We have a problem bridging. We have a problem bridging to the next generation.
Transfer principle.
We have a problem transferring freaking principle.
Transfer principle. A lot of us don't understand that. You know, we even from a biblical worldview. You know, when David dies, David sits down with Solomon and tells him, he's like, you know, I'm about to go the way of all the earth. You know, be strong, show yourself a man, and then he directs him to God's commandments, right? Abraham spends the last half of his life setting up Isaac, right? Getting Isaac, when he got Isaac a wife, got his nigga wife, you know, got him set up before he passed on. I mean, good parents, and the Bible says it's a wise man leaves his children an inheritance, right? Well, part of your inheritance are the instructions you get. Like, if I gave you money and didn't give you any instructions, what have I done for you? Or if I gave you wealth and I didn't teach you how to use it or manage it, what have I done for you? I've set you up to fail. So a lot of us, we don't transfer the values, the norms, the beliefs, the ideals, the integrity. We don't transfer that down to the next generation. We hold on to it, we live it. In some cases we don't. But we don't pass it on to the next group. And when we do that, we weaken the next generation. You gotta pass it on. You know, I mean, I think about this perfect example in a New Testament. The writer Mark. We first read about Mark in Mark 15:57, I think. He mentions himself. He says there was a young man who ran away, and they grabbed his garment, and he ran out the garden naked. Mm-hmm. That's more than likely Mark, right? We read about Mark again when Peter was released from prison. You know, I think Mark, they went to his mom's house. Mark shows up again in Acts when Paul and Barnabas got into a fight because Mark had deserted them on the first missionary journey, and Paul was like, I ain't taking this fool nowhere, right? And we read about Mark one more time when Paul is about to die, and he's in prison at the end of 2 Timothy, and he calls for Mark. Mm-hmm. Same person he didn't want 30 years prior. Because
he said he was helpful to his ministry.
Exactly. So, you know, a lot of us, we don't understand, man, like, we're not patient enough to hang on so we can transfer this information, transfer this wisdom to the next generation. We just look at him at face value and be like, nigga, he don't want nothing. You know, he ain't gonna be nothing. It's like he's 21. Yeah. Really, who is anything at 21? You know what I'm saying? So we're not looking at the next generation, looking to pass on what we've experienced to them, not the good stuff at least. You know, we're passing on our cynicism, we're passing on our hatreds, we're passing
That's
on.
what I was about to say. Because that's what makes the young 21-year-old cynical, because they can hear that. They can sense that. They can perceive that. And they know that people are just, they're being, it's different from being a hater. You're refusing to invest in me, and you could easily do it. You're on another level of hating. You're like hating on my potential.
Exactly. Yeah, and hating on my potential, you're destroying our future.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's the thing, is that I think with the trauma and triage, I think especially for African Americans, we got to recognize the trauma, man, and start, like you said, looking at how bad off we are. You know, in terms of for all Americans, you're talking about trauma. I think for all Americans, if there's any trauma all Americans have experienced, is that we finally realize like how dangerous our liberties are for us. Like when they're not checked and when they're not used soberly. Like, you know, we got a virus that's running rampant because people are fighting over it's my right to not wear a mask. And fool, wear a mask. You know, I mean, I don't know. I think as a country, the country's been traumatized, but again, these are all self-inflicted injuries. You know, like, you can't be mad because you hit your head on something and you weren't paying attention. You know, you can't be mad because you burned yourself and the label said, you know, you can get burned. It's just self-inflicted. But I think we're recognizing threats as we kind of shuffle to the last part of it. There's a really good book out there called The Unapologetic Guide to Black Mental Health by Dr. Rita Walker, U of H grad, by the way. Put it out there. Go Cougs. Well, no, U of H professor, I'm sorry. But in the book, she talks about how African Americans, how our experience lends to our poor mental health, and how we have to take ownership, man. We got to do something different with our mental health. And, you know, I mentioned this book, but again, this is for anyone. I mean, like, if you're really at a point now where you feel like you are not well, you know, you need to seek help. You know, seek help and recognize that. I mean, and again, not everyone can get free counseling because Landis is right. It is expensive. You know, I have a therapist and she ain't cheap, but you got to get help. Talk to somebody. You know what I'm saying? Write, journal. You know, go outside more. You'd be surprised what fresh air and sunlight will do for your mind, much less your body. You know, there are times at work where I'm inside that dank building, and you know, I'll slip out, eat my lunch outside in the little courtyard. People think I'm crazy. I be walking around like the soloist. You know what I'm saying? One little meal, eating. But I need the sunlight. You know, your diet. You know, what you are, what you eat. So, I mean, I think Landis and I were having a conversation earlier tonight. And he's just like, you know, if you stop eating pork, you really can't even eat breakfast food anymore. Right? Cause right, you can't.
Everything is pork. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're going to offer me the lowest quality meat to start my day off. And you're going to hide it in a buttery biscuit.
We can make some shekels.
Yeah. Right? Assimilation. I think that's another thing to be careful of too. Man, there's a video I used to show my kids when I was teaching in the classroom of lemmings every year. I show them a bunch of lemmings jumping off a cliff. It's an old Walt Disney video.
Mm-hmm.
And I would always tell them, you know, we are watching you. We're watching you do this every year, watching you make stupid decisions every year because everyone else is doing it. I said, but you notice at the end of the video, there's like 10 or 12 lemmings at the very end who didn't even go on a trip. And they're going to propagate the species. They get all the choices now because they didn't make dumb choices with everybody else. And I think for a lot of us, we want to assimilate so bad, we'll do it to our own detriment. You know, everybody else is eating this way. Everyone else is listening to this kind of music. Everybody else is working themselves to death. Everybody else is doing the same thing. Everyone else is popping pills to stay well. I mean, it doesn't make it right.
That's what I would consider herd immunity, being immune to the herd. Because I mean, you could feel it. I mean, it's easy when you get out of your comfort zone and move to different places, but when you get back into the groove of living in your comfort zone, you do see what's over the spirits. Just like going back to Daniel 10 and looking at the Prince of Persia, the king of Greece. There's entities everywhere that are over these little things. That's why you feel the spirit when you get there. If you're just a little bit more transparent and you're just a little bit heavy, if you just put a little bit more focus on self-care, you're going to assess, oh, I'm back in this spirit. As soon as I drive back in this city, I feel it. I feel it because I'm inside the collective. I'm in the herd, you know.
Facts.
And you're in an organism. You can feel it when you reintroduce yourself to an organism, especially if it's a familiar organism. So, I mean, like, if you were from Compton, even though you might not be shocked and appalled and traumatized as a rookie, when you get back there, you be like, oh, yo, you know, they want to try me again, and I got to do this, and they want me to see, I gotta get out the car and do this and this. It's because that's the spirit. That's just the spirit that's over that space that resides. It demands that from you.
Right. And we may all not be from Compton or have to go to, you know, Chirac or whatever it is, but we all do have environments that challenge our spirits. We do have environments that are toxic for us, and then we have environments that we are forced to overcome. So I mean, recognize those things, man, and find a way to detox yourself from your environment. Or detox your environment. Find a way to do that. You know,
and that takes game theory. It takes game theory. It takes getting on this board that you're familiar with. It's a hard board, you know. Some of the boards at work you can work on, you know, because it's important. That's where you make your money. You gotta detoxify some of that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But at home, some of the stuff might be scary to go against. But, you know, luckily you could have a board of your own where you could be like, well, I'm just gonna keep the toxins off. And we're going to challenge them when they get here. But a lot of times we're in a toxic environment that has toxic environment where you have to apply a little bit more strategy. And I think you got to get into your game theory of, let's not try the same thing the same way and expect different results. Let's just try it a different way this time. Mm-hmm. And I guess let's be mentally acute of, I tried this, I tried that, I tried this, and this is what worked. This is what kind of did it. Just kind of more pay attention to what your results are.
Right. Again, this is awareness, man. I mean, it's funny. You know, as I approach my 40s, you know, I have friends that take very good care of themselves, good health, and I mean, they're always talking about infusing waters or eating figs or doing something, you know, something that's holistic, but it takes a certain level of awareness to be able to understand that, hey, alkaline water is better for my body. Or, you know what, I need to flush this week because I've had too much. Or, you know what, I need to fast and just juice because I've had too many toxins in my system, and I recognize that my illness right now has a lot to do with my diet. That takes a certain level of awareness. But in order to be aware, you have to be in tune. In order to be in tune, you got to tune out to what everybody else and what everything else that's happening in the world. You have to tune out to that. So again, a lot of it is just replacement therapy. Taking out the bad, putting in the good. You know, if it's processed and it's been handled by somebody else, it probably is poisonous for you. You know, if it's synthetically made, it's probably poisonous for you.
This all makes me think about programs. Programs. Why is Monsanto taking over the seeds and turning it into clone seeds and taking over the germination process? Because it's about programming everything. Everything takes a program. So if you're going to triage yourself, understand the biggest and the baddest programs that you got over yourself. We're making fun of Houston because it's a down south place and it's easy to get caught up into the herd mentality because we all got plenty out here. Everybody needs to get an F-150 truck. Everybody needs a pair of these pants. Everybody needs this Birkin bag. You don't got no red bottoms? Well, if you had money, there's so much out here. You know what I'm saying? But let's just say if life was real for you, programs was keeping you down. The fact that you can't do this, the fact that you can't think like that, the fact that you're in a poverty program, the fact that you're in this world or that world or this crowd or that crowd, those are all programs. Right. So if you're going to triage yourself, take honest inventory of the programs that you've been conditioned to accept, and then learn how it's about deprogramming and unlearning and taking those things off and liberating yourself from these limitations on your electromagnetic frequency, your soul, your space that's being programmed, your matrix, your power, your spirit. That's what's happening. Attack those programs, and let's alleviate ourselves of these programs and program ourselves and reprogram ourselves.
Speaking of programs, as we dip out tonight, you can catch us on SoundCloud, Project Restoration on SoundCloud, YouTube us, Project Restoration, and also we're on Instagram at projectrestoration.podcast, and we're on Twitter at Project Restoration F8.
Yeah, well, that kind of does it good for us, man. We just want to give everybody a shout out. Just, hey, people. Hey, populace. What are you doing, guys? Now, hopefully you're listening to us on this SoundCloud or whatever we've got going out here in the space of now, man. It's all about living now, bro. We're like day 18. Happy Martin Luther King Jr. birthday, and I don't think it's his birthday. I think it's just Martin Luther King Day.
It was 2 years ago, 2 days ago.
2 days ago.
And actually, that will be one of our podcasts. I'm not real big on doing stuff just because it's the day of, but we'd love to talk about his last book. Where do we go from here? Chaos of Community, Martin Luther King, 1967.
That's a good one.
Yeah, last book he wrote before he was assassinated. But we will dig into that. But y'all,
33 degree Freemason.
good night.